First of all, you said Putin said he supports Biden. Don't forget, Putin always lies.
That is true that in a recent interview, Putin did say he preferred Biden because he was a more traditional politician. It's impossible to take anything from it because, like, if Putin wants Trump to win, he's not going to come out and directly say, I want Trump. And it's really hard to read anything into it, in my opinion, at least. I think it's, I don't know, I just think he's having fun, honestly.
That's the first point. Second point, you said about importance of watching to Asia, definitely. But don't forget that your state of Ohio is exporting $11 billion to Europe. And what will be with 1,000 jobs in state of Ohio if Europe will be disrupted by Putin, which he clearly wants to do?
Europe is our #1 export market.
And also, like, the roots of more than half of population of Ohio, German, Irish, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Polish, English, what to say to these people, just that you are not so interested in Europe right now. And the last thing about deterrent. Ukraine had a fantastic deterrent against Russia, who had nuclear weaponry. And because of push of the United States of America, you took it from us.
You took it from us. Oh, damn. Well, he is the representative of the American government, even though he doesn't represent the Biden administration.
So please, if you not want to help Ukraine, so help us to become back nuclear state.
Dude, I talk about this all the time, man. How are you going to tell Ukrainians if we just abandoned them and they gave up the nuclear weapons at our pressure because we said we'd make them a pariah? How do you argue to them that they shouldn't just do what the Israelis did and say screw it and start a illegal underground nuclear weapons program?
So help us to become back nuclear state, and we will.
Which again, this is also why I support the Ukrainians, because I feel like they gave up a real sacrifice to nuclear non-proliferation and, you know, undermining them and abandoning them after this, which I think would be generally scummy on top of bad for our credibility and bad for nuclear non-proliferation.
Deal with Russia ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps Senator Vance.
Which is that we need Europe to play a bigger share of the security role. And that's not because we don't care about Europe, to your question, sir, to sort of the things that you said, Ms. Lang. It's because we have to recognize that we live in a world of scarcity. When I sort of listen to these questions, and I listen to so many of the private conversations I've had, one of the attitudes that I think is very, very dominant at the Munich Security Conference is the idea.
How much you want to bet he doesn't react to the nuclear question? It's too hard. It's too difficult of a question. He's going to avoid it. I'm telling you that right now.
Idea of the American superpower that can do everything all at once. And what I'm telling you is that we live in a world of scarcity in weapons manufacturing and America's capacity to make the critical machinery of war. And that world of scarcity is what I'm trying to get us all to wake up to. In that world of scarcity, we can't support Ukraine and the Middle East and contingencies in East Asia.
Yeah, but also, I would say definitely for Ohio, whether or not this is politically the case, European stability is much more important than Israeli stability. It just is. It just is. When you talk about what they export to Europe, when it talks about, you know, the European economy being so integrated with the American economy, when, oh my God, not to even talk about any of, I just don't understand, even if you were to say it's a world of scarcity, how Ukraine could be near the bottom of the list for top issues of the United States. I just don't understand that. Considering if you live in a world of scarcity, Russians take over Ukraine, we're going to have to dedicate more American resources to the region. Europe's going to have to dedicate more resources to the region because the Russians just took over Ukraine. And not only do they have all the resources in Ukraine, but now their forces are now closer into Europe. For me, from a resource perspective, outsourcing this this issue to the Ukrainians that are eager to do it, I feel like from a resource perspective makes more sense than us having to make a permanent commitment to more NATO deployments that are going to cost more and more year over year, as we had for decades been decreasing our deployments in Europe.
It just doesn't make any sense. The math doesn't work out in terms of weapons manufacturing.
Also, when you talk about Taiwan and Ukraine, there are some things that Taiwan needs that the Ukraine got a lot of, like the Javelins, and they have backlogs of. The F-16s is another backlog, but we're also not giving Ukraine F-16s directly, so I don't think that would be a major issue. But a lot of the things they need are also different. They also, like, a lot of the capacities that they need that would supposedly strain, that's a strain on a strain on Taiwan to give the Ukraine. It seems to mostly be within javelins, and I mean the anti-ship missile thing is, it seems the Ukrainians seem to be going the sea baby route, even if they'd want that. There's some overlap, but a lot of it doesn't. The biggest area of the overlap would be the artillery shells that Israel is using that Ukraine also needed, and we gave the Israelis like 2 months worth of our capacity to produce artillery shells that could have gone to the Ukrainians. That's an example of this actually coming to fruition.
The one final point I want to make here is I hear a lot of self-congratulation in this room and some of the conversations that I've had back home in the United States. This is not just a criticism of Europe. A lot of self-congratulation about how much our GDP is bigger than Russia's GDP. And yes, we are richer than Russia. Our citizens have better lives than the average Russian citizen. That is certainly something to celebrate and be proud of. But you don't win wars with GDP or euros or dollars. You win wars with weapons. And the West doesn't make enough weapons. Now, I don't mean to beat up on Germany here because I love Germany, but I wanted to respond to something Ms. Lang said earlier.
I just want to throw out there a few things. All of Europe, plus the United States, plus our Southeast Asian allies, if they cannot produce enough weapons to confront the Russians in Ukraine, on top of the Ukrainians themselves, there is a problem that is much deeper than just the Russian-Ukrainian war about a defense industry as a whole, especially considering how much money we spend on it. Like, we should have the flexibility to be able to match the Russians, or at least come close to matching the Russians, enough to make them have to at least come to the negotiating table with the Ukrainians on semi-equal footing.
Look, Germany is the one country, maybe, in NATO that did not follow the stupid Washington consensus and allow their country to be deindustrialized during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And yet at the very moment that Putin is more and more powerful, where the Russian army is invading European countries en masse, this is the point at which Germany starts to deindustrialize. Look at the number of people working in manufacturing in Germany now versus 10 years ago. Look at the critical raw materials produced in Germany now versus 10 years ago. The energy dependence now versus 10 or 20 years.
By the way, can I just throw out there, he answered none of his questions. He didn't answer the question of nukes. He didn't answer any of his questions. He didn't answer the question about the exports that Ohio, like, none of it. He just
years ago. We have got to stop deindustrializing. We want Europe to be successful, but Europe has got to take a bigger role in its own security.
Again, Europe is starting to take a bigger role, but it seems that as Europe's starting to take a bigger role, the position of the Trump movement at the moment is, well, we can just abandon them. And let me just throw out there, if you want Europe to care about our security interests, if we don't care about theirs, they'll have no interest to care about ours. And the next time some terrorist plants a bomb somewhere, kills 5,000 Americans or something, why should they come with us gallivanting anywhere to try to make our country safer if we won't put in any resources to help make their country safer?